Welcome back to the Whiskey Rocks podcast. I'm Joel here with my best friend Chris.
Hi there.
Hey Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fucking great. It's Friday. You know, it's beautiful out today. We got a special guest here with us today, Billy Gould from Faith No More. How are you?
I'm good.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. Glad to talk about Serbian Brandy. So actually, let me start this over. Welcome back to the Brandy Rocks podcast today, folks, because we're talking Serbian Brandy today. Special episode. Really excited to get into it, learn all about Serbian Brandy, Bill Gould's journey with it, and what's going on in that space today. So once again, thanks for being here today, Bill. Thanks for coming on.
Sure.
Awesome. Great to have you. We like to start off the show with some news that we might have going on. Chris, what's happening in your space?
A lot. We just did a pick for Frey Ranch,
Nice.
and we just got approved for a Four Roses barrel pick. A lot of barrel picks coming up in the back half of the year.
Awesome.
A lot more trips to Kentucky for me.
Well, that's just a horrible thing. Right?
Well, to Sarah, it is my wife.
Yeah, well, you know, it's fun. It's just a hobby, right?
Yeah, but she has to pick him up at the airport afterwards. That's the problem.
Right. It's the Cleveland airport. That's a simple one to get in and out of.
No, I drive. That's the issue. I drive.
Oh, wow.
All the way back.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. It's about 6-hour drive, right?
Yeah, depending on where you're going.
Depending on where you're going, right? Well, that's cool.
Any
other? No, with me, just we had the Copper and Cast pick that we have going on in a couple weeks here. We have the Weller 107 pick coming in a few months, and I was asked to be on another Doc Swinson's pick. So got a couple barrel picks going on over here as well. People like hearing about our palates for some reason, Chris. I don't know why. Yeah, it's kind of a cool thing. What about you, Bill? Any news? Anything you want listeners just kind of be aware of?
News? No, actually. I mean, Rakija, which probably most people watching don't know what it is. That's a lot of news right there, really.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we're going to get into that. We're going to get into Rakija. Maybe it's just whiskey Rakias, right? Or Rakija rocks. I don't know. We have to figure out a good name for this episode. We'll get there. But we'll get into that all in a second. We'd like to start off our show with some stories you might have missed. All right. First up, we've got a story that's kind of a follow-up to our last episode. We were on with Al Laws from Laws Whiskey House. We started talking about Bruce Springsteen. What was funny was just the correlation with Bruce and Born in the USA stuff and things of that nature. And then a story came out around Bruce Springsteen this last week. He was on the Colbert Show, and he was talking about his 3 a.m. snack. And I thought it might be fun to just talk about what his 3 a.m. snack is and go around the group here, and we can all kind of get what each other's 3 a.m. snack is. So Bruce's 3 a.m. snack, he says, when he wakes up or if he's coming home. I mean, come on, Bruce Springsteen, is he coming home at 3 a.m. these days, by the way? I don't know. But anyways, I don't know. Maybe he is. He's the boss, right?
He might be waking up at 3 a.m.
He might be waking up at 3 a.m.
He's getting up there,
exactly. He's getting up there, right? So the 3 a.m. snack that he has is the classic peanut butter and jelly sandwich. There you go. Bruce's 3 a.m. snack when he's up, he's eating peanut butter and jelly. What about you, Chris? What do you
First off, I don't think like a PB&J that requires like effort and work. You have to get the loaf of bread out, the knife,
true.
Or 2 knives if you don't want to contaminate.
There's a lot going on there.
That's work. Right. That's not a snack in my mind. That's like a little meal. Like I'm just, we have a little chocolate jar in our kitchen with just like little Hershey miniatures and stuff like that. So if I'm up at 3 a.m., I have a terrible sweet tooth. So I'll just grab like 2 or 3 of those and pop them in. And
there you go. Good. All right.
To me, that's a snack, especially like at 3 a.m.
Okay. That makes sense. I follow the logic. What about you, Bill? What's your 3 a.m. snack?
I have a thing. I've always had a thing with sugar. Sugar makes me insane. And
there you go.
If I eat something sweet, drink something sweet that night, I'm going to wake up at 3 a.m. and with like anxiety, actually. When I have a sugar crash. So if I'm going to have something in the middle of the night, it's not going to be sweet. It's going to be fatty. It's going to be like some kind of meat, some kind of cheese that's going to put me down.
There you go.
Okay. Well, you guys are a bunch of wusses. My 3 a.m. snack is Rakija. All right.
That's fair.
Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. So that's my 3 a.m. snack is Serbian Plum Brandy, folks. All right.
That's, by the way, that's a cop out because I know Jamie will probably be listening and she wants to know what you're eating at 3 a.m.
You think my wife listens to this show? Come on now.
I don't
kidding
know.
me? There's no way. You know, I'm gonna say something about my wife right now, and then we'll see if she listens to the show. Jamie, you snored a lot last night in your sleep, and you let out some gas. So we will find out if my wife listens to this show. All right.
I'm gonna edit that. I'm gonna edit that and just send her the clip of that.
You jerk. You probably will. You probably will. All right. So what would be so honestly, I think Chris can attest to this. I can eat chips and salsa all times of the day.
No,
it doesn't matter. Yep. Chips and salsa. I can wake up and eat it. I can survive on chips and salsa. So I would probably grab for a bag of chips and some salsa at 3 a.m. That'd probably be my 3 a.m. snack. Fair?
Yeah.
Well, look at that. We all had different things. We had
different
sweet.
things.
We had, the savory, and then we had junk food for me. Right. So those are our 3 a.m. snacks. If you're listening, what's your 3 a.m. snack? We want to hear. Let us know. I'm going to put this out on Instagram, and I definitely want to hear everyone's 3 a.m. snack. All right. The next story in the music world was Eminem came out with a new single this last week, and Gen X is exploding about it, right? Everyone in Gen X is just excited that Eminem's back. But in the song's called Houdini, and he samples Steve Miller's Abracadabra in it heavily. Like, it's a big part of the song. And what was really cool is this last week, Steve Miller came out and talked about it. And what he said was really pretty interesting. He put out this lengthy message on Instagram. There's a long chain of stories, poetry, lyrics, and musical roots that have crossed cultures and generations, inspiring the whole world for hundreds of years. And in all those lines of thought, music, and rhythm, there are special artists who take it all in and create new original ideas from their own feelings and experiences. Eminem, you are one of those timeless originators, building something new on a long musical legacy of original artists. I thought that was pretty damn classy.
Somebody's not getting sued.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, cool. Absolutely.
That struck me as just such a cool response from Steve Miller.
Agree.
You're talking a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, right? And he's done all sorts of stuff. And he comes out with that response in a world where it feels like a lot of people would take the other approach. Like you're saying, Bill, like he's not getting sued, right? Like it feels like in a world where people get so bent out of shape about stuff like that. It was cool to see Steve Miller be like, you made it your own though, dude. Like you obviously were influenced by it, and I love what you did with it. I just thought that was a really cool response.
I agree.
Yeah. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah. Really cool. So if you haven't heard the song yet, folks, check that out. Go check out Steve Miller's. It's a much longer response than that. That was just the highlight from it. But it's a really, really cool just way of kind of looking at it, because in this world, we're all brought along by different influences, that's for sure. I'm going to want to talk to Bill, obviously, about some of his musical influences while we're on today, but like we're all brought along by all these different musical influences. And it's really cool to be able to pay homage to the people that you were influenced by, and have that influencer kind of be like, hey, man, that was awesome. Good job. No,
totally. Good
job, Steve Miller. I'm applauding you on that response. But anyways, that's this week's stories you might have missed. All right. And Bill, let's talk. Let's talk all things Serbian brandy. And, I think let's start with, what is brandy? I mean, we have a listener base that loves music. They love whiskey, right?
Right.
They might not know what brandy is. So let's talk about that first. Like, let's talk about what is brandy? Well,
brandy is, what we know as brandy is something that's distilled from fruit, basically. Has fruit base. Could be a wine that was distilled. But what's interesting is what people think brandy is. And brandy has a lot of, cognac is a brandy, Armagnac is a brandy. And what most people consider brandies are for French-centered, or they're German-centered, like schnapps. And what this stuff is, it's brandy because you have to call it something, and it is based on fruit. In this case, it's plums. But it's not really brandy because, and I'll tell you why. When the world started distilling spirits. That was around 900 AD, 1000.
Wow.
And it started in the Arab world, Mesopotamia. Alcohol is an Arabic word. And that distillation and of distilling alcohol made its way from Turkey to Europe through the Balkans. So there's like stills where they were making Rakija in there's a Bulgarian still they found. It goes back to 1000 AD.
Wow.
The first brandy that was recorded in France was in 1313. So that's like 300 years later. They are the same thing technically, but they're really not the same thing, like taste-wise, profile-wise. This is much more primitive and much more rustic, which you could probably tell. It's not like a cognac, right?
No.
It's a little, and the reason it sprang up was because, this is a really hard part of the world, and a lot of fruit grows there, and everything had to work on the farm. So, when you distill whatever fruit you don't eat, right, so it doesn't go bad, this is a way to preserve it and use it for cleaning the house, for medicine, for having neighbors over. It's kind of like became like this duct tape of Balkan culture that it still is like that today, right? And I found out about it because I was just staying over at somebody's house and they bring out the rakia that they made because almost every family makes it, and it's so culturally speaking, it's very different from what we know as brandy and schnapps. It's much more rustic.
It's very rustic. I've not had the unaged. What you sent was the aged, right? 18 months, right?
Yeah, I figure as a whiskey show, the aged would make sense with you guys. Yeah, there's an unaged that we do too. And believe it or not, I mean, as simple as it is, it's actually very complicated in some ways. It's from the same farm, the unaged and the aged. The only difference is one is stored in stainless steel for like 6 months, and the other is 18 months. The one you're drinking now is 18 months in the barrel. But they're very different from each other, considering the similarities in production.
Now, so let me ask a question real quick, since I'm not an expert on brandy at all.
Right.
I know they have brandy snifters where you're supposed to like hold it in the palm of your hand.
Sure.
Is this better? Do you prefer it more warmer or just at room temperature?
Room temperature is good. I kind of think of this like a red wine temperature.
Okay.
The clearer one could be more like maybe little chilled-ish, like a white wine. But brandy snifter is great because you want the nose. I mean, this rakia, there's a lot of people that make rakia. There's a lot of people in Serbia that make rakia, and there's a lot you can get some rakia in stores. Not a lot of it's like this where it's handmade, on a farm. There's the industrial, production plants that make this stuff too.
Of course.
There, it doesn't really matter so much if you have a brandy stifter or not. But for something like this, that's really just, the only ingredients we used are plums and water, and that's it.
Oh, wow.
So even though the fermentation is spontaneous, it's you want to get the nose and all of the aromatic qualities as part of the experience of it.
So plums, right? This is what
plums.
We're using plums. How's that process work in terms of you got trees that are growing plums? They're going out and picking based on season, based on how's that?
Oh yeah. Well, it's first of all, it's in Serbia where this stuff is. The plum trees are, and the distillery is on the farm. Serbia is like I think the third largest world exporter of plums. That's just kind of something that really grows there. Yeah, wow, and these plums are these Serbian plums that we use. They just distill really well, and we're talking hundreds of years they've been doing this. So a lot of places on the same farm with the same trees, so they really have dialed in, things like come into play, like, terroir, the soil, the air, the location. Right. So I was talking about plums, and what was the question?
Just how do you, I guess, I don't know, figure out which plums you're going to take, right? Okay. Like, is there a seasonal type aspect to
it? Yes, there is. So the plums are ripe once per year, right? So it's got to be a good year. You're very weather dependent. I'll talk about ours because this is kind of unusual from a lot of people who make commercial rakia. A plum tree, the plums don't ripen exactly at the same time on a tree. And generally speaking, if you're making a business cost effective, you see some ripe plums and you strip the tree and you ferment it, and whatever's missing sugar wise, you add to make the fermentation go correctly. The plums are only picked the day that they're ripe. It's called maximum technical ripeness, and they fall from the tree that day. So we'll hit the same tree like 7 or 8 times. Those plums are collected. They ferment for about 13 to 15 days, and then they're distilled. And then they're double distilled. But I mean, after the first distillation, we have a little more time. But, because the trees are all ripening at one time of the year, I mean, it's a crazy scramble. I mean, you're picking, you're distilling at the same time, you're fermenting at the same time. The still, which is this wood-fired still, with they're just using wood from the farm, it's just going, people are chopping wood, people staying up all night, and they're just cooking.
Wow. Truly craft. Truly.
Yeah, it's truly a craft experience, right? It's truly a craft experience, which is really cool. So you were at someone's house. They brought out the rakia, and it was just like this moment of truth in your life. Is that what happened?
Well,
okay, all right.
That's not exactly the first time I tried rakia. The first time I tried rakia, Faith No More played in Budapest, and it was like 1992. And that was when the world of that part of the world was opening up, because all the communist fall had happened, and all these places were opening up to touring bands. And we had I think it was Angel Dust then. So we were touring. We were very popular then, and we were a big band coming in. So kids were coming in like we played Budapest. There were kids coming from like Bulgaria, on these 12-hour buses to come to the show, because there's nothing in the region. That was the only big event. It was us, Guns N' Roses, and Soundgarden.
That's so cool.
So, kids, I mean, and then think about it, at that time, everything fell. I mean, there was no money out there. I mean, it was, when communism fell, the economies of these countries were devastated, right? So the only thing of value that these kids could bring, that they wanted to share was their homemade rakia, right? That, their parents made. And it's very valuable because it's very personal. So, I mean, I remember backstage, lots of kids are giving me bottles of rakia. And, some was pretty good. Some of it wasn't so good, but it was really endearing, and I remember the name, and I kind of associated my experiences, which were really exciting and fun then, with the rakia. It wasn't till a couple of years later when I was at somebody's house, and when I toured out there with punk bands and stuff. I just love the area. I mean, when that world opened up to me, I just dove in, and
wanted to go back.
I just kept coming back. I've been coming back for like almost 30 years now. And I was staying at somebody's house, and I was, I was the guest. So, the grandmother, the house had some rakia that she gave you at breakfast time. And that's when, when a real special one, I just tasted it and was like, man, this is it. This is like, I was in, here's another, this is actually the moment that I had it. I was at my friend Slavko's house, and I was with a band, and we crashed on his floor, and he had some rakia just at the table, and it was from his, I think it was from his grandfather. And I was like, I'm sitting here in Belgrade right now, and I'm drinking this taste that is the taste of this place. And it's like all the sounds, the smells, and this taste, and it was a very good one. It was a very pure, and it was like a lightning bolt that came from the sky. And I'm like, this is my drink from now on in. And that began this odyssey of, that was sometime in the probably late 90s or 2000, 20 years of trying to find it out here in the States. And there's some stores, I go to all the European markets, and I look on Google, and it was like, nothing really tasted like that stuff I had at, Slavko's house,
Yeah.
And it was like, I was chasing that because that was a way for me to reconnect with that place. And, I just kind of gave up on it, but I made friends out here who were from there too, and we would talk, about rakia, and if somebody's cousin's coming out, maybe they'd bring some in their suitcase, or I would go out there and I would get a bunch in my suitcase and bring it back, right? Yep. And I did that for almost 20 years, and I didn't really think about it much, it's just that's just the way it is with this stuff. And around 2019, I was hanging out with a bunch of guys who were like tequila drinkers and whiskey drinkers, and I'm a musician, right? I like beer, I like wine, and I like to drink, but I couldn't say that I was a spirits like expert, right? So, but I like hanging out with these guys because they would teach me a lot of stuff and show me a lot of stuff that, you know, it would improve my knowledge of it, right? And they know these guys are like consultants of restaurant groups and stuff, and they know everything, and they didn't know what Rakija was, and I was like, wow, you know, like it really never got here, you know, like a proper version. So I was just like thinking about it, like, you know, I think I might want to do this. I think I might want to bring some. And I went to this guy I knew from high school who worked for a distributor here in California. And I was just like, hey man, let's get a beer, you know? And I was like, I'm an idiot, you know, I'm a musician. I have this crazy idea. Just tell me why I shouldn't do it, and I'll stop thinking about it.
Yep.
Like, but there's this stuff, right? And it's amazing, and nobody knows what it is. And he's like, oh, you have to do it. Like, you can use my company's import license to bring a pallet in, you know? And I was like, I left his house, like thinking that was the end of the story, to like, oh my God, now I have to do this. And so I started importing it in the States. And that was about, you know, the pandemic hit, but yeah, it's been like bringing this crazy unknown thing in that's really, really high quality. And it's exciting. I mean, the other exciting thing about it is actually when I decided I was actually going to do this, I have a million stories about it, but I'll try to keep it just so people, because this is a new thing and I don't want to overwhelm you with details, but
sure.
I went to Serbia, you know, just to find the Rakija that was going to be the representative, because there's 10,000 families that are registered there that make Rakija. I mean, it's a national thing. And I wanted something that spoke to me the way that my first one spoke to me. And I wanted something that was really correct, that I could bring out here like a real representative, you know, example of what Rakija is. And when I got to Serbia, you know, the country was going through this really interesting change where, you know, it was a communist country, and so everything was state managed, and people just used to cheap stuff. And Rakija was, you know, you could get a bottle of Rakija in a store for, you know, $3, $4.
Wow.
And the family stuff, you know, that I'm talking about, it wasn't for sale because nobody could afford to buy what it actually cost to make if you wanted to make a commercial thing of it. So, you know, if I got Rakija and I would bring it back home, it was always family made stuff. It was never commercial stuff. And Serbia started going through this change where there was, you know, these commercial producers were starting to come out, and they're charging more than people were used to, but it was actually correctly made, proper Rakija. And I got there right at that time when there was this kind of awareness and kind of rediscovery of Rakija culture. And it couldn't be a better time to start this, because now there's a blog there of these guys who like evaluate Rakija and go to villages and stuff. And
there we go. Nice.
It's a great time, and it made it way more fun. And also, you know, meeting really smart people who were starting to, now it's not just a folk art anymore. It's actually a legit, you know, category of spirit, you know? And it's exciting to be a part of that, actually. It's like a movement.
I can imagine. It's a movement. And you guys have gotten, I mean, I love what you're doing, even just with the marketing of it.
Oh, the label's fantastic.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Baba, right?
Okay,
right?
Baba, yeah.
Let's talk about Baba. You know, let's talk about Baba. Where did Baba come from?
I'm gonna do this. If I send you some pictures, can you can show them later? You can edit them and everything.
Yep.
So when people die in the villages in the Balkans, there are these obituaries that they put on bus stops or the post office or wherever, with a picture of the person who died, so that the villagers know that what happened to the person down the road, right? And people there, it's just normal. But for me, it was like so insane seeing all these dead people all over the place. And it was like, it was really punk rock, actually. It's very punk. It's like, this looks like a band, you know? This looks like a band flyer. And I was like, if I ever, you know, before I even thought I was going to do this, if I ever do a Rakija, this is going to be the label. And so that's the label. I saw Lubica, who's the woman on the bottle. I saw her on the internet. I saw a picture of her, and I'm like, this is the woman on the bottle. Like, this to me is Rakija. Like, because everybody who lives there has a Baba that looks like this, and she makes Rakija. And this one made Rakija. She made it till she was 98 years old, and like, she made it natural Rakija. She made family Rakija the way the kind that I like. And unfortunately, she died right when I started doing this. But she's a perfect thing to put on it. And the word Jebiga means fuck it.
Yeah. Oh, is that what that? I was going to ask you what Jebiga meant. So Jebiga means I love it.
So it's got, you know, and there's a couple reasons for that. One is because, you know, Balkans can be a tough place. I mean, if you just think about, I mean, not even thinking about the wars 25 years ago, which were horrible, but going back to World War I and World War II, I mean, like just Serbia alone, like they lost a third of their male population in World War I, and then another third in World War II, only like 15, 20 years later. So we're talking about, you know, a history of, and before that, they were subjugated by the Turks for 500 years. So this is like a place that's been through a lot. And Rakija is kind of one of those things that have really like been part of their identity in a really meaningful way. Like it's personal. But more than that, I mean, what got them through all this stuff is black humor. And I've always loved the humor there. People just talk shit. And in a really great way, right? Like I mean, if you know Faith No More, my band, we always had humor and we always had black humor. And
we care a lot.
I really fit into the culture. Yeah, I really fit into that culture in that way. Yeah. And so I wanted my Rakija to have that as well.
No, it's awesome. And we actually talked about that on our original episode, right? It's just your band was, I mean, Faith No More was always that band that was just like, fuck it. Right? Like, I mean, so it's kind of perfect. It's perfect to me, right? Because it's, I mean, like, you just had your identity, you had what you wanted to do, and that's awesome. I love that I'm drinking fuck it brandy. You know what I mean? Like that to me is just awesome. Folks, once again, Jebiga, right? Did I say that right?
Jebiga, yeah.
Jebiga. Make sure you're following Jebiga on Instagram. I just started checking your Instagram out too. Lots of fun stuff. Lots of Serbian culture. Lots of
absolutely.
Yeah, right. Like a lot of that dark humor that you're talking about. You know,
absolutely.
Lots of that on their Instagram. So it's definitely worth checking out and following, and you'll probably get a lot more news from Bill and the team that way as well. Right.
I try to bring the vibe out because it's more than just a drink. It's not just a drink. It's a whole. It's a whole world, you know, and it all fits together, you know, and food goes with it, you know, and music goes with it, and attitude goes with it.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because I mean, in the whiskey world, I mean, Chris and I always say there's no right way to drink whiskey, but what's the right way to drink Rakija? Like, is it neat, like we're drinking it right now? Is it with ice? Is it in a cocktail? Like, what's the right way? Is there a right way?
The right way is exactly how you're drinking it now. So well done, boys. Well done.
All right. Yes.
Well, you know, my issue, you know, when I go out, you know, and I explain it to people, I go to a bar, they're like, what kind of cocktails can you make with it? They're like, yeah, you know, you can do that. You know, I mean, you kind of have to do that in this country if you're going to like make any kind of business.
Well, especially
everybody wants cocktails.
So, yes,
exactly. Right. That's right. Yeah. So, but really, neat is the way. Neat is the way this is drank, and it's just because, you know, you have it on your farm. I mean, hey, you know, it's 1521. You're right. You have a barrel in your barn, and the neighbor comes over. You tap it out of the barrel, and you pour him a shot. I mean, that's just it. And you drink.
You know, it's funny. It's funny that I said that. Like, if we're talking about, hey, America, especially, it's hard to bring something new, and we're talking about something that's thousands of years old.
That's the irony. Is how it's one of the oldest spirits on earth, and it never made its way here. That's the craziest thing of all.
That is the craziest thing about this when you really think about it. All right, so drinking it neat is the right way to drink it. So and us, we did it the right way,
and with company.
With company, right?
Yes, absolutely. Right? It's a very social drink. Absolutely.
Let's talk about just some of the characteristics. I mean, this is a 43%, so 86 proof. Aged 18 months, small batch. What's small batch mean to you guys? I'm sure it is pretty small, right?
I mean, the still only cooks 500 liters at a time, so there's only so much you can make. And you know, the barn just couldn't hold that many barrels. It's I'm putting a picture here. I'm sending you a picture so you can see what the distillery looked like. This year, we actually expanded the barn to a more of a barrel room because we had to. There was no more space in there. So you can only make so much. I mean, it's tough in a way because this country is so huge. You could sell 100,000 cases of something, and it's just a drop in the bucket in a place like this. And then what I really want to do, I mean, and part of the reason I'm doing this and putting all the work into it is because I want this culture and I want this category to be respected. I think it hasn't been respected. I think it should be. But to get respected, you have to have a certain meaningful amount where it gets to people, right? And when you're just making it in your barn, how are you going to make enough where America's even going to know that you exist, right?
Yeah.
So this is catch-22, and but you also have to keep the characteristics of the homemade, quality. So it's a bit of a balancing act that we're trying to do here. But yeah. So that's the thing about storage is a thing. Quantity is a thing. It's going to be small batch for a little while, for a few years.
Yeah, of course. So let's talk about distribution then. I mean, here in the United States, where can people get it? Pretty easily.
We're in 11 states now.
Okay.
So you can get it. You can go to our website, yebiga.com, and there's like stores and bars. So you can find it if you need to find it. We also, through our site, through Mash and Grape, we can sell it online. So
nice. There you
can
go.
Deliver it too. And there's we have a thing, I think it's free over 50 is the code. It's on the website. You can get your shipping free. Yeah.
Perfect. Folks, check that out. Always good to take advantage of a discount whenever you can get one, right?
I mean, I'm talking about it, and I've explained what it is, but I want to hear what you guys think of it, because it's all about how it tastes and how it hits you too, right?
Right. No, totally. I mean, first time I put it to my nose, I was shocked because it was very familiar, if that makes sense, even though I never had it before, right?
It's a great observation. That was what happened to me too. Yeah.
Right. It was just this like familiar nose. When I took it to my nose, I was like, it's definitely familiar. I've never had Rakija before, but there was familiar notes that came out of it. Fruit, definitely you pick up the plum, right? You do pick up that plum in the nose. Definitely carries through to the palate. But you're getting, I mean, once again, this is aged 18 months in oak, right? So you're getting a little bit of those vanilla and caramels in there as well that come from the oak. Can we talk about the oak though, real quick? Because Serbian oak, I guess I'm not super familiar with
it.
That's right. Right? Is it like French oak? Is it like American oak? Like, what's it most like?
It is. I think you're going to start seeing whiskeys with Serbian oak because it's a little cheaper than French oak, which is getting crazy.
Good to know.
But it technically, if you look at it scientifically, it is French oak. It's Quercus petraeus. But it's been growing in Serbia for a long time, and because of the different flora and fauna and terroir, it ages spirits differently than French oak does. It's got its own kind of characteristics and personality. I think the grains are a little tighter.
Interesting. All right. And what I want to do after the show, and actually I'll probably make a video about it as well, because that French oak type of nose and note kind of really came through to me. So I actually want to blind it with a French oak whiskey and just kind of see, one that's similar in proof, so I can kind of just see like what I can pick up from each one, because there were definitely like familiar notes to it when I first experienced it. And I've had, 3 little pours since we've been talking too. So, I mean, it's very drinkable, like at 86 proof, it's very drinkable and enjoyable for sure.
Bill, when I got the bottle the other day, it arrived, it was very warm out. So the bottle was actually warm. And then I was a little like scared because the outside of the box was wet, like recently wet. I'm like, oh, I hope it's not broken, but it wasn't. I mean, it was like they must have dropped it in a puddle or something like that. The bottle arrived undamaged, but I couldn't wait to like try it out. So I tried it out, and definitely, like Joel was saying, like very familiar, but I got definitely hints of plum. But I was also getting like red hot cinnamon candies, maybe due to how warm it was. But then I still taste it in here now that it's like room temperature. And this is what I think you're tasting. I can tell you what that is. It's right. There's it's almost like a Christmas spicy type of, So this farm is really unique compared to a lot of plum farms in that it's grown. These plums are grown at a high elevation, about 2,400 feet, which is about as high as plum trees can grow. It's up on a mountain. And because of that, the trees are surrounded by pine trees and conifers. And I think you're getting some of that piney oil into the fruit, into the flower, and that's distilling, and it's surviving distillation.
Wow. I didn't think about that. Okay, that's really interesting. what? And
That's
so
really cool. No, I would agree with that completely.
So it's way up in the mountains. Obviously, using probably like fresh spring water in the mountains. Is that?
Oh,
is that
yeah.
water?
Yeah. I mean,
okay,
literally water from the ground. Yeah. I mean,
so cool.
It's amazing. The water's fantastic, but it's just right out of the ground.
Very cool.
And that's it. Those are the two ingredients, the plums and the water. That's it.
I mean, that's awesome, right? Like, I mean, when you think about like what you can get out of plums, water, and time.
Right? And experience. Plums, water, and time. I mean, it's also the guys make it that go in this family for multi-generations that, you know, they know how to do it. They know how to make this work, right? And
that's great.
And, I mean, how rustic it is, and you know, and you'll see these pictures that I'm sending you, like, you know, it's very rustic, but you know, there's elegance to it too. There's experience in there.
Yeah,
there's no doubt. Yeah. You know,
I wanted to say for how young it is compared to whiskeys, not similar at all. Where this has it's all rounded and it's nice and soft and kind of mellow. None of that like Kentucky hug or burn or anything like that. You would think an 18-month product or even like the brand new stuff. No,
that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point, Chris. It goes back to what I was saying. It's very drinkable, right? And
absolutely.
Like if I was to drink an 18-month bourbon, I would. It's not a pleasurable experience.
Unless from Texas, it's super heat.
It's just not as pleasurable, you know. But this is really it's balanced. It's got this real, just familiar flavor profile to folks, and I think that's important because when you see something on the shelf that you're not super familiar with, you're able to smell it and taste it. I mean, it's for you, Bill. Like, you got to get this to the lips of people. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, that's the hardest, right? That's the hardest part, right?
You know, if you tell people, hey, would you like to try some plum brandy from Serbia? It sounds horrible. But, you know, when you taste it and you smell it and you taste it, it all makes sense. But without that, there's no written description you can give to somebody who doesn't have experience with it. It's going to sound palatable.
Yeah.
No, it's very hard.
I think it is hard. And I think one of the things I'm going to ask our listeners to do is like pick up a bottle and do some blinds with your friends at your next whiskey night. You know, do some blind tastings with your friends and then tell them what they had after. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's an interesting thing to do. Exactly.
Right. I think that alone could kind of like just get people thinking about the category with that respect that you're looking for. Right. Because like it holds up.
Take the biases out. Right.
Yeah.
Just judge it for what it is. Exactly.
Right. I didn't know what to expect when I opened this bottle up. No idea what to expect, right? I've had brandy before, and this didn't strike me like those normal cognac brandies and the like when I was having it, right? And I was like, oh,
that's right.
Now I see why Bill's so excited about this stuff.
Yeah. You know? Now, what I can say too, I mean, I'm really proud of this. I think it's a great representation of Rakija Slivovica. But you know, this is a rabbit hole here. You know, this is a door opening to like thousands of Rakijas, you know, that are out there that people live with. I mean, some of these guys age this stuff for 20, 22, 23 years. And if you do it right, it's insane. It's amazing. You don't see a lot of it. There's not a lot of it around. But when it is around, if you're in the right place with the right people and they pull out a 20-year-old properly aged Rakija, it's insane. It's amazing.
I can imagine. Yeah. I can imagine just the flavors.
I know,
right? Like, we're gonna have to go to Serbia, Chris. I think we're gonna.
I highly recommend it. The people are amazing. The food is absolutely incredible. It's not too expensive for Americans at all, and it's fun. It's great.
I just had a friend who got back from Croatia not too long ago, and he was just raving about the area. Just like,
it's great.
I'm going back. He's like, I'm going back. He's like, I'm going back. I want to see the Balkan Sea again. Like, he's just like saying all these things. I'm like, really? Wow.
It's a bug, man. It got me. Yeah. I mean, Croatia is absolutely amazing. Croatia is insane. Croatia is insane. Bosnia is amazing. Macedonia is amazing. Like that whole area. And it's all very different. I mean, you can drive from one place, you know, drive 3 hours, and you're in a totally different place, totally different culture. But it's still Balkans. And I mean, it's just a deep, deep place.
So when you were there with Faith No More doing Budapest in 1992, you said, right?
Yeah, 92.
Where else did you guys go? And
I mean, back then, Well, we did. I mean, really, Eastern Europe back in that tour was really just Czech Republic, was Prague, and it was Budapest. And then I think a few months later, we came and played Slovenia,
Oh, wow.
Ljubljana.
Okay.
And that because there was a war between Serbia and Croatia going on at the time. So we couldn't play there. And then what happened was, the war went into Bosnia and there was an embargo. And so there wasn't any playing in there too. So there was a big part of time when bands couldn't go. We actually didn't play Serbia until 2010, I think. Believe it or not. So from 1992 to 2000, but I'd been there millions of times since then, because what happened to me was I would be like, like in Ljubljana, we had that show, and then we had like 3 days off, and me and my bass tech, we rented motorcycles. We drove into Croatia, and we drove like through the mountains, and it was like the more I saw, the more fun it was. And then I came back on my own, and I came back and I told bands in San Francisco, hey man, this is where we want to tour. And, we just booked tours and yeah, I mean, it's an amazing place.
The more I hear about it, I'm like, I put this on the bucket list,
Oh yeah.
I think I'm gonna have to put it on the bucket list for sure.
Yeah, I would.
Joel, Joel and I were in a band together. So Joel, we got to get the band back together. And
I think you're right.
We got to start touring.
That's how we met. That's how Chris and I met 25 years ago at this point.
Been a while.
It's been a while, right? No, that's awesome.
We need a bass player. So
there we go. Yeah, Bill, what are you doing?
I can bass player / booking agent.
There you go.
Yeah, good.
Joel's a singer. I'm the drummer.
There we go.
We got the rhythm.
Let's do it. We'll get it going back together. No, that's great. So take us through a little bit of where you're looking to go here with Yivica. I mean, obviously you're in 11 states, right?
We're in 11 states, and right. I mean, some places, we're in, maybe, we're in a handful of like stores, handful of bars, and that's kind of a thing. Things don't happen fast with something new like this, right?
No,
but they find their home, and they come with a little culture of it. And the places that we're in tend to be at home there, and they tend to gestate with people and become accepted.
Right.
I really I only got into Serbia like last year, this year.
Actually. Oh wow!
So I've only been exporting it. I mean, the whole reason I did this was to bring something here, right? And then I started getting all these letters from Serbia, like, where can I buy your Rakija? And I'm like, you can't. You have to buy it in the United States, and you have to take it in a suitcase back to Serbia. And they were like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, how can I not buy Rakija in Serbia?
What they said was,
yeah, basically. So, I mean, after a couple of years of that, I was like, people there want it. We should be available. So we did that this year. And with that, I'm going to get into Europe, because there's a lot of also just Balkan, people who emigrated to Germany, to France, to Netherlands, and, just bringing good Rakija to them is cool,
obviously you got a little bit more, I guess, just well-knownness, right, of the spirit in Europe, right, which will go a long way, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that we talked with, actually, I don't know if you're familiar with this brand, Blue Note.
No, I'm not.
Okay, so Blue Note, we talked with their president a few weeks ago, and they're small but getting bigger, and they've really focused on just growing bigger within the states that they're in, right? Because the states that they're in are very strategic with their branding and with what they're all about. I can imagine that kind of being your play as well in terms of.
I mean, it has to be, because when you talk about a country this big, there's two ways to go. You can get a shitload of money, throw millions of dollars at it, and go national. Boom. How are you going to do that when you're making this out of a barn in Serbia?
Yeah, exactly. Right. It just doesn't make sense.
Just forget about that. Just scrap that one. So the other way to go is, start. Maybe a lot of people, it's not going to be a fast adoption. It's kind of like, if you're a noise band, right? And you're touring, and it's like, okay, we're only going to play this little shitty, after hours club, but with the people who would be open to it. And that's kind of how we're doing it. It's very much like being in a band and touring in a van.
Yeah.
Very much like that. Giving cassettes, bringing cassettes to club bookers.
I love it.
So I know that world. I know that. So I can do that. I've done that before.
You've done that before. You did that with Faith No Man, right? Before you got Faith No More, right? All that.
I mean,
Right.
We're really lucky. I mean, we did get success, but I mean, even when we did, it took a long time. And most of what I remember and how I connect with Faith No More was always the work part of it, not the success part of it.
Yeah. It takes work. It takes a lot. You know, I think AC said it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll, right? You know, like those guys. Exactly, right? Well, Angus Young there for
Bill, I want to mention before we hop off. I'm a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame since I live here in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, cool.
And every time I go, they have where you can make your own entry on who you want to be nominated into the Rock Hall. And I always split it 50-50 between Faith No More and Soundgarden. So every time I go,
I'm like, cool.
Soundgarden or Faith
awesome.
No More. Yeah, so I'm trying every time I go. Like I've been like 5 times this year so far. But, Doug Esper and I were, and many thousands and millions of your fans really hope you guys deserve, because you guys do deserve it. Like you guys were amazing band.
You guys definitely deserve it. You brought such a different sound to rock,
fun and innovation.
That's one of the things we talked about on our the first episode, right? Is this innovation to rock that wasn't happening at the time, right? And we love it. We love it. We love innovative spirits and whiskey people, and obviously this is
and not taking.
I mean, this is my music now. This is my music, right?
This is your music now.
It really is the same thing,
right?
And it's something kind of it's a little bit outside, but at the same time, it bringing something outside when people get jaded, they think they know everything, and bringing like spark. I think this is an inspiration as a potential springboard to a lot of things that we're not familiar with. Right?
I don't think
it was for me.
I don't think it's that outside of the realm, because Joel and I view music and spirits as things that bring people together.
That's all.
That's right. That's right.
Very on brand. Just in the overlap of that sort of thing.
Cool.
Yeah, no, totally.
Well, we're all in agreement there.
Right.
Yeah, we're all in agreement there. That episode that we did, it was Faith No More and Blanton's. Are you familiar with Blanton's, Bill?
I am.
Okay, right. So we had you guys paired with Blanton's in that episode, right?
Wow.
That's
pretty amazing.
A little bit different. we were trying to talk about an overrated whiskey in an underrated band. So we were called the Over Under, which I told Joel, I said, that sounds like a sports betting. And he's like, no, it's fine. Like, I'm like,
yeah. Well, we changed.
But we ended up changing. But yeah, so you were the underrated band and that was the overrated whiskey.
Right. So we but here's the thing. One of the things that they did really well at Blanton's was this horse, right? So have you thought about putting on the top of your bottles a little baba? Doing like sweeping, or a baba doing mashing of the plums. I'm just kidding, but that could be a fun little thing. Just saying.
A thing that was correct could work.
A thing that could work.
There's a lot of companies now doing like speed pours, but like Old Elk has one where the elk's mouth, and to me it just was like an elk vomiting, or
right.
Whistle Pig had one like a piggy bank sort of where the butt unplugged, and to me it looked like diarrhea. But like I always thought, like, why don't they have like something holding like a water pitcher or a glass, like an actual little bottle pouring out of the bottle,
right? Right.
So you got baba.
Interesting idea. That's a very interesting idea, actually.
You know what? First ideas are free here, Bill. But after these
don't listen to them. They're all free.
We're going to charge our consulting fee. Let me not kidding. What we do, we have fun. We're a fun show. We try to be fun. So what else should folks that are listening know? Right? What are some parting thoughts here, Bill? When you want listeners to think about Rakija, when you want listeners to think about everything that you're talking about today, what are some parting thoughts that we should leave them with?
I just think really what really touches me about this stuff, and what I think that people who are into this probably would appreciate, is that I think that, we live in a really well-off country. It's got problems, and not everybody's well off, obviously. And if you're not well off, it's not that great. But generally speaking, we have access to a lot of things that a lot of people in the world don't get. And that's an amazing thing. Unfortunately, I think that, because there's so much economic success here, a lot of products, that we think are real things are not really real. I mean, you guys probably know about, a lot of the corn syrup, that from a lot of these whiskey places come from one place. It's all these stories, to sell product that are not real stories. And, it's a shame when you grow up and you think that something is one way and it's actually not, and you kind of get suckered, into the story to take your money. And what I think is really just important I can say about this is, and what touches me about it is that, these are these guys on a mountain making this stuff by hand, and it's completely for real. And it's a place that's been through a lot of real things and real suffering, but also, really learned how to appreciate great things in life. And I think that there's something about the spirit to me and the culture of it that I think that can make your life better here, because it's something real, it's 100% real. So that's what I can say about it.
No, I love that. I mean, authenticity today is undervalued in a way. You know what I mean? There's so much fucking fakeness out there, and
but authenticity is such an overused word too. I hate to use it because everybody uses it, like,
I know. I get you. Genuine, like, real, right? Like, it's like, what are the right? I know, but
they corrupted it. They corrupted it.
They have. It really has been corrupted. But I mean, I hear you, because it's something I experience on the daily basis with some of these things that are coming out of left field, and you're like, come on, really? Like, come on, really? You happen to find these patents, and some of the stories we hear in the whiskey world are a little crazy.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Right.
I mean, that's fun too, as long as you know the difference. I think I don't have a problem with it. But the problem is the culture here. We have to be very careful. I mean, we're a very rich country, but we're also a very powerful country. We have the biggest military in the world, and we want to know when we're doing things. We want to know that we're working with real stories and not fake stories, right?
Yeah.
No, and that's a thing that it reflects in every aspect of your life, on the art that makes you happy. Everything about who you are. You want to work with real things and real information, more than ever now.
No, it's good.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more.
Good point. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and it's a great part way to kind of part today, because I mean, folks, try it out. Try something real. Go out and do something different.
That's it.
Right?
Hey,
do something different.
If you hate it, I'm not going to be offended, but I think you should try it. It's different. It's like these guys said, it's familiar. There's something about it, right? But you can't. How would you? This is okay. This is a great way to part, right? Because I agree. I think there is something familiar. It touched me in a way that I felt like I knew it already, right?
Yeah.
But how would you describe it to somebody else? In words?
In words, I would describe it as, like this very drinkable spirit that has, I mean, it's obviously very fruit forward, a little spicy finish, but nothing that's like.
What do you compare it to? Like, if I'm a guy, okay, I want to buy this drink. Why should I buy this drink? What are the characteristics about it?
Man, what do I compare it to? That's a tough one. I'm trying to think what I compare this to. It's hard to compare it. It has that familiar flavor profile, but to compare, I mean, it definitely. I want to compare it to like a French oak whiskey. I want to compare it to like a whiskey that's been aged in French oak, and so I would probably go along those lines with somebody.
Okay.
Right? Like a whiskey that's been aged in French oak, and it has a little bit of those spicier caramely finishes that a French oak whiskey would have. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's very fair. I always think of it. I kind of go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
What about you, Chris?
Yeah, that's a hard one because I can always be very long-winded, and then I'm not a great salesperson, so I'm not in sales. So you're kind of asking the wrong person. But I will say this, it almost reminds me, and I don't mean to offend, so I don't want our listeners to be offended or you, Bill. It's almost like a plum apple juice. I would kind of describe it as.
That's very interesting.
But it also reminds me of kind of like a white wine. But it does have that familiar. But I know why. By the way,
never heard that before.
I'm no sommelier, so I could be completely wrong on the wine aspect of it right there.
No, but the impression is
definitely it's a very very approachable, very smooth. And I know
It's
that
very
word,
approachable.
people hate that word smooth. I don't mind it. It's a texture thing. Like it's a very mouth coating texture thing. But we've had brandy before. We've had Armagnac, and I've had apple brandy. I've had apple brandy straight off a still, like new make apple brandy at like 140 proof. So Ohio, like it does remind me of an apple brandy.
Or Calvados, Calvados even.
This is my first plum brandy. Yeah.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah. I didn't want to offend by saying apple juice because it's not apple juice, but but it does have that sort of smooth, like apple juice is very crushable and drinkable, and it doesn't taste like apple juice, but it tastes like a shoot of that, like that's alcoholic kind of, with some other great flavors going along with it.
It's that approachability that stands out, right? Like when I first opened it, I had no idea what to expect, right? I took that first sip, and I was like, oh, and I had another sip, and then before I knew it, I was pouring another glass. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, right? Like it's approachable.
Yeah. It's very easy. Very easy to overindulge. Dangerously delicious is what I like.
What I can say, has been overindulged this too many times. It's fairly forgiving too. It's not going to really give you a headache today. It's not going to mess you up because the ingredients are very, very pure and clean.
Yeah. I
mean, plum and water. It's not going to kill you. That's the other thing. You don't have to be afraid. You know, it will happen. I mean, we started doing this. We had 1 liter bottles, right? That's what we started with. And it was like, I'd have people over. Nobody knew what it was. So, you have to sit down and drink with them and talk. And, that liter bottle would go halfway through. And like, holy shit, we just drank a lot. And it would be okay. I could be tired the next day, but it wasn't as bad as I was thinking it was probably going to be. Right. So just take that to heart. You'll be okay.
It's a fantastic product. I want our listeners to go out and pick some up. It's very delicious.
No, it is, and I'm definitely going to make sure some of our listeners.
You gotta try it. You gotta try it. And we love the marketing. We love the label. We love everything about the branding. And I'm going to order a T-shirt off the website. And I was looking at them today. I'm like, I'm really glad you mentioned that it looks like a band poster because I'm like, man, these T-shirts look like a band T-shirt. Like you have black or you have white. Like that was it, black or white. Like and it looks like a poster. Kind of. I'm like, I love it. Like.
Yeah,
guys, I really appreciate you giving me the time to talk about this stuff because I mean, obviously, it means a lot to me too. But it's like guys like you that really help me get this word out because it's all about people who get it and connect with it and want to turn other people onto it. So I really appreciate that.
Oh, of course, we love having you. And we're gonna make sure that people are getting this to their lips. Like I'm gonna have some friends over this weekend. I'm gonna blind them like I was saying with some other whiskey and. I'll let everyone know how that turns out. But we'd love to have you on down the road again, Bill.
I'm around anytime.
All right. Awesome.
Okay, guys.
We'd love to.
Pleasure meeting you guys.
Nice having you. Nice having you here today. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for all the support. Make sure you're following Rakija on
Rakija.
I screwed that. Rakija. I screwed it up. I know I screwed it up as soon as I said it. Rakija Rakija on Instagram, right? Make sure you're checking them out. I'll make sure to put their Instagram handle in the show notes. Thanks for all your support, everyone who's been listening, everyone who's been tuning in week after week. We really do appreciate the authenticity. I'm sorry to say that, Bill, with that word again, but the growth, the organic growth that the show is having. So thanks again for all your support. Find us everywhere on social, Instagram, TikTok, all those places. You can listen to our episodes on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, basically anywhere you can listen to a podcast. You can find us. As always, whiskey, or today, Rakija rocks, sip hard.